Indeed, we're beginning. Okay, thank you for joining the session. And with the beginning of the lift up with the block, you're going to sit on top of a block in front of a bolster, or you're going to lie back immediately, one or the other. But I want you to situate the backbones so that you can relate as you lie back to the level of consideration of stretching the breathing muscles. So this whole lower base is supported and elevated so that you're in a energetics of an inversion, right? Bridge pose is considered a mild inversion, but it's more the energetics that we're experiencing. So feel where the belt is buckled and that the buckle is easy to get a hold of if you have an emergency. But when the feet separate, or maybe your legs stay bending because it feels more comfortable in your back, I want you to find where the experience of the legs is going to be comforting for your back. So at first I'm sort of have my feet parallel. And then once I move my sandbag on top of my upper legs, then I can get into the groove of the position of the weight on my legs. And then as the thighs, maybe they have a tiny rotation from the center of the leg out to the feet, feel if you can kind of gradually guide them maybe a little closer. And not even bearing witness to it with your eyes, but experiencing the felt sense of connection in the sand down through the legs. And then the breathing muscles will open out the arms. We'll select a height of blanket that works for you today, whether it's the 2 blanket or 1 blanket. I want you to sense where the place on the back of your neck at C7, right, that notch. It's a pretty good knob. You want to notice that that's open, right? That is nothing crammed under it. So if you want your blanket underneath you, you do want it fairly high up, or it's not jammed in your neck. And if that causes you a sense of pressure at the back of your skull, then you take 1 blanket away. Okay, I feel good with the 2 right now. I sense that feels safer for me. But some of us might find that pressure, it's like having something on that's too tight, so you want to find the pressure in your brain is comfortable. And then we align the breath. So the inhale is an experience, of course, of movement, of oxygen, but it's such a ritual in our yoga practice. Even though our habits in daytime, we could have breath ritual, but this is a good time to ritualize your breathing. And it could be just regulating your breath. So inhaling 4 counts and emptying the lungs for 5 to 6 counts. Now, if the knees begin to feel like they're kind of sloping and stretching too much, you might bring your feet a little closer together, and that will bring the thigh bands to a little bit more rigidity, more tension. So noticing if you can correspond with your breathing path, even if you change the legs. And you could certainly bend the knees, right? And still work with the connection of the lungs on the in-breath. This is when I find I can take a blanket away when my knees bend, because it takes a little bit more lift into the lower body. And I slope back. Okay, so with a few more moments in this shape, whether the knees are bent or legs are down, the legs down, the advantage, right, is that you're working to lengthen the front line, opening up into the hip flexors. But if it's feeling painful in the back, then it's best use is to bend the knees. So you'll get to different spaces with all the poses we are going ahead into. Okay, so once you find some pattern of awareness of breathing, could be very shallow for you right now, but when we take our sand away and we actually unbuckle, and then you're kind of free of that belt, bring the right knee up, and well, actually it's already up for some of us when it's bending, but lift up the right foot from the floor and guide the knee so it feels like it's moving towards the chest with the left foot on the ground, bottom of the foot down. So you have both knees in a full bend. And then what will you do when you do this alternating walking position on your back? So we're going to alternate the expression of the knee moving towards your core, and feel when you have the foot on the ground the thread of ability to connect to your spine. You may be working on this for years to figure out this coordination. We won't be in a Zoom class for years, but maybe we will. But I mean, as far as the time of the session, you'll be able to at some point shift on in your day, but probably will be doing Zoom for years. So as you alternate in this walk, feel where there is the dominant kind of arch, and that kind of lets the belly lift, which has its challenges. I don't want my belly to not feel like it can, or my abdominal muscles more so, to feel like they can be part of this movement of the leg lifting. So what I want to encourage you to work with in this final strands of movement is the foot on the floor that's holding your base, to really feel that push down, and then that thread of strength up into the leg. The foot is on the floor, feeling that thread all the way to the pelvis, and then feel the tail gently kind of lift. So it's almost like a cat pose, right? When the knee comes up, it's like you're trying to almost get a little bit of that curl. Okay. Just kind of funny. I don't think I've known of a cat with curly hair, have you? Okay, it's a funny image, huh? So wherever that came from. But get a feel where the spine is attempting to move when you're on the back, moving the knee towards the chest. And then take Badakanasana, feet together, soles of the feet together, knees out. And of course, if this is a grabber in the rear, it feels like it grips up and you have too much grip there, then you might slide your feet a little down. I won't do too much of that push because it is quite a stretch in the inner thigh. But you could guide the feet higher up. Your feet will likely be pushing in together. And the layer of the inner thigh is fairly busy with the circulation drill. Arms open. Chest feels like it's reaching. One reason I'm starting today with this bolster in this position under the back with the block is that you have that core body suspended and supported, and then you can work with that horizontal breath. So widening, strengthening that service into the lungs, kind of servicing the lungs. That is what you do in this class. And now with the feet, releasing that pressure inwards, we're going to lift up gradually through the knees so you feel maybe a mild hinge of your hips, but that will become a little deeper. So kind of scoot your feet a little apart, and then we're going to push the bolster. Now I like to get rid of my block underneath my rear and kind of put that over to the side because I'll use it in a moment, but you can also push the bolster a little bit forward under your pelvis so it holds your pelvis up without moving the block. You could always leave it there. So you're going to find the back of the pelvis now a little more on the bolster than just your ribs. So your ribs will lose some of that bulk underneath them, okay? But still, you have the sacroiliac, all that space is on the bolster. And then when you lift up your feet, so your knees squeeze a little together, I want you to kind of warm up the back. So it's kind of a back fluff. So we'll take a ball or a block. I think the ball could be nice because it's responsive surface. You don't have to be forcing the squeeze right now, but feel what kind of attention you bring to holding onto a ball. Okay, with the knees up, the feet up, arms open. And then warm up the spine by moving the knees from side and center and side. And as you go through the center this time, just go through. So you're trusting that the movement is warming up what's warming the spine. And, maybe when you have your back on the bolster this way, those drawing the knees in towards the chest could be a little bit easier for that curve of the back. It would be interesting to kind of study that concentration. But right now, the back concentrate is going more side to side, including your hip, right? So the hip and then the brace of holding on to that ball doesn't allow you to get flimsy. We're not really flimsy, but where the concentration motions. Now, I imagine your arms are probably less of this curve like cactus, like the first pose we did. They might be capable of moving straight open. So that takes some of the curve out of the upper bone of the arm, and it can be easier and more challenging for some. So try some of the variations then. As you move to the center, I would think lifting the legs straight up with that ball between the knees. And then your emphasis here is the two legs kind of have to work in unison to squeeze into the ball. So with the feet relaxed, push in with the leg concentrate. The leg concentrate. Everything is a concentrate today. So we feel when we move the leg muscles in, but it's like you're trying to keep that lift of the legs without pointing toes or flexing feet, but the lift of the legs squeezing into the ball. Okay, now that the leg energized in the central channel, right, and even into the adductors, we'll remove the ball and we'll add a sandbag or any kind of weight you might have onto the soles. So let the legs bend so that when the back of the thighs sense a little bit of opening, and then when you put that sand on the feet, you might still your body, just find some stillness of the reaching. And I'm down to one blanket, so if any of you still have the two, I would certainly go down to one. Okay, now when you push your feet up, you don't have to do multiple leg presses, but feel that motion reaching, right? It's different than the ball though. It's a different concentrate. Closest word in my memory to take. But when you feel the leg lift, then flex the feet. And then find where there's some connection of centering the back of your head on one blanket, flat blanket. Maybe you move the blanket back so it's just under that occiput, so it's kind of a little bit higher than the neck base or the brain stem, right? So you feel it kind of sensing where that bony protrusion is at the back of the skull, although it's hard to notice that when you're on the back of your head as much. And then feel if you can let your arms go to cactus, elbows bending, so that circulation dynamic flows to the heart. And emphasize that as it flows to the heart, muscle, and the arms are opening the chest, right? It affects the baroreceptors right in your throat, which affects your blood pressure. So there's a good amount of hemodynamics going on here. And if the feet start to kind of lose their pressure of flexing, that's okay. You want to find somewhere it's a habit to do this pose. And you don't have to analyze it, you just experience the circulation. Even if it feels like there's just a few simple things that you like about it, not overwhelmingly so, is enough. So relax the eyes and sense the brain centered. Now the feet could move a little forward. For most of us, this is probably the truth. We have a good ability to keep it straight up. But if it's going towards your head, it's not the best thing for the circulation in the stomach muscles. So feel what amount you can trust to move your legs a little forward. They're still straight up, but feeling where there is a possibility of challenge in the core. Breathing with the belly filling and exhaling, relaxing out of the mouth. Now there's a couple arches that you might notice, not as much probably by now, but the back arch and the neck arch to me is fairly dominant. So feel what touches the floor. Feel what part of your upper back into your neck relaxes down. And before we venture out with some other shapes, I want you to really find that impact of the security of this, sort of like mountain pose, when you stand on the 2 feet and you work on the general activity of stance. And we're doing that here, right? We're doing that reclining, a supine stance. Okay, so let's keep this sensation of lift. Can you notice the muscle patterns in the legs a little bit? And I find trying to create a balance of muscular, kinesthetic into that flexibility, kind of generating that flow is really an interesting conundrum for class, I think. So when you soften through the knees, just soften enough to lose your sand. So not too much, and I know some of us have a blanket overhead, so you might be able to toss your sand. You might want to slide it off with your hands. But as you find the belt, maybe it's below you. Let's go today without buckling it for this one. So you're still on the bolster, back of the pelvis, blanket could be tucked in a little bit for some, might feel better on this one. And then I get the belt under my feet. And if you like to hold the belt in so it's connected in a loop, that's fine. If you decide you want to go that route, I'm just going to save your ears a little bit by not buckling mine. Okay, so feel when your feet are wide. And this is nice because you can kind of test it a bit when you have no destination with the width of your belt. And maybe go to kind of what you might think of as, well, this is pretty massive wide stance for you, but relate to your back. So if it pinches anywhere in your back, hopefully you don't get to the pinch point, at the upper leg into the pelvic backing, then that's too far. But feel where there is now a little more leg draining, right? We had this moments ago, feet straight up. This is just a different, it's more leg draining. So we're adding to pushing the feet out into support. Okay, so feel where the arms have some relationship, and that can be nice to keep some tone in the arms. Now, as the feet are, I kind of like this. This is a pretty good kinesthetic with the belt being held. So when you slide your feet to about hips distance, okay, now you're going to bring the left foot down. And as that right leg is up above the hip bone, we'll take the belt together and hold it with the left hand. And then I want you to try to let that foot kind of kick a little forward so it drops into the belt, right? You're not lowering the leg down forward, straight down in front. You're going to cross it to the left, but take the time like you're trying to climb up your belt a little bit. You have some intensity with the hand, and then relax your left foot and cross the right leg and all the way through the footing to the left side. So you're pulling and then encouraging that circulation dose into the outer right pelvis. So that could include the legging, it could conclude into the back of the pelvis. And it might feel like your hip is experiencing some fluidity in the back. So let's try letting the arm relax open. We've done this kind of themed work when we have a bolster under our knee. So we might get back to that today at the end. So we have a nice kind of full cycle of experience with the nervous system in a pose. Right now it's a little more excitable because you've got your hand pulling your belt, right? It can't be everything just flops. So feel when you get into that position when your leg crosses to about maybe 8 o'clock is good, or the 9 o'clock mark is good with the foot to the left. I think that 8 is really good if I can get that to reach downstream, and emphasize that it may feel like it's your foot doing the work, or you're actually, your physicality is, oh, my foot moves down or moves up, and you kind of yank on the leg. But all in all, it really starts at the pelvis, right? So you've got to make a commitment there to give it some honest freedom to reach to the left without rolling over. Take a deep breath and let a sigh out. And then feel if that waist has some, light sensation. Now, when you bend through that right knee and you come back in center, you might want to play with hooking that right foot to the left knee and just for a moment kind of feel the connector. I like doing this just randomly. You could practice this for a few moments. And then as you shift on the leg, you bring the left foot into the belt, the right leg wanders. We'll go into it a little faster on this side, since I think you know the drill on the second layer of movement. And then when you cross that leg to the right, are you experiencing leaning into the bolster a little bit? So of course our upper, well, actually most of the ribs, except for maybe a few down at the base, are on the floor, back ribs. Floating ribs different, but you might feel that back base is nicely centered. And then the ribs, right? It's a little easier to get these ribs to move when you have the bolster on the side versus the belt holding on with a belt. So I would encourage you to put a hand on the left rib cage and breathe into that hand. So feeling the way of steering your breath. And as the hand is holding, if it gets to be really uncomfortable with the grip, then feel it's like when you loosen it, or if you even have so little hold, the leg has to do a lot more work. And then when you come back to center, left foot maybe hooks to the right knee, you could take the belt off this time, okay? And what we're going to work our way towards is a whole side layer of experience in the Sage series. So when you unwind from this shape on the bolster, the best wave of movement would be a side to side, like when we started on the bolster, this when we had our hips on it. So without anything between the knees, let the body rock side to side, and then feel when we're going to do left side sage down. So when you roll to whatever side you're comfortable, you're going to slide down towards the foot of the mat and then come on into a setup for your blanket. So you're going to need likely a ball and your sand and your blankets. So see if you can mildly struggle to get those things set up. So we've got a couple stacked blankets behind our bolster. And then when I get a ball, I like the ball. I actually like a block overhead more than I thought I would as time has gone on. It feels nice to have this kind of supported trail, okay? And that includes this leg piece. So I put the ball on the inside of my right leg. Sometimes inside the knee works well. And it kind of depends on how I want to stretch my right leg back in a moment. So, of course, the further this reaches back, the fuller the stroke of movement in the arm. So it's up to you. Don't do too much. Okay, find what feels like it's a nice level of lowering down, a nice level of height for you with your blanket. Could need to go higher. Kind of don't know till you get your head on the blanket, and then feel if you roll to the back of the head or you like to stay with the side down. Okay, so a couple ideas would be to get the blanket a little higher if that feels like your neck is pushing down, but it also might feel good for you to let your head roll a little bit to the back. I'm going to push a little more my ear on this one. Okay, sand. Probably at this stage of it is a little late, but here we are. You always put on before you lie down. So the sand is ideally anchoring, right? The waist, it helps you with traction and grounding. So with that lift of the right arm, whether it stops kind of mid-reach to the block, that's okay. You kind of want to feel your arm draw a little bit through space. If you're trying to sign your autograph with your elbow, try to feel it move. And then when that arch is occurring, you might find a block. And if it doesn't naturally support you, then maybe you don't use a block. Maybe you're not with your hand overhead. Maybe it's down besides the bolster or open. So feel that careful movement quality through the arm and that reach through the waist. Breathing. Now, intercostals are in motion with the breath, the ribs. So your inside might feel when you get on the side body, like it has a different kind of squeezing or pulsing. So we're going to do a little self-study with this whole kind of side to the inner layer. And the twists that we'll do are not, they don't have to necessarily be advanced and your deepest, most fierce twist, right? You can make them a variation that's soothing to you. Just like this pose, right? This is pretty intense with the arm overhead. It feels a little bit more calm with my arm open. And we're working with the felt sense of the ribs in that middle place, right? The thoracic chamber. It's good stuff. Okay, now with this kind of deep pull on the right side, you've got a lot of motion with this right ribs and waist. Let's see if we can harmonize that when we come up for a few seated angles, okay? And some of them will be rotations. So move your sand away. If you feel like you don't want to quite get up, it feels like that's too quick of a move, you're welcome to stay with it. This pose will try to stay with it. Or you can also take a little bit of a gentle twist here, right? You can let your head turn and relax on the blanket and then turn the rib cage so you're not really pulling in the side as much, right? So you could take a few moments here before we come up. Sleeping sage, right? It's been a while since we did that. And then I will bring us along into the next phase of seated so that there's some organization with that. So coming on up, for those of you ready to sit up, again, you can stay prone, right? Prone twist. So when you come on up, if you choose so, we're going to take it so that it'll be a little simpler for the twist than we're maybe used to with that, twisty, like pretzely. But we're going to take the right leg so it's straight in front, and the left leg's going to cross over. Sand free for the moment. So feel the right foot push forwards, like if it's reaching, or actually don't let it push, flex it, unless you have a wall to push into. It's not necessarily going to respond well in the knee if you try to force into that, but feel the flex. Let's say your knee is not happy with this. Let's say you're a little worried about that. You could take a sandbag, slide a little part of that under the right knee. Doesn't have to go under because your foot doesn't want to step on it. And that kind of fixes that. Sometimes I don't know until we get in the moment. Okay, because I want to make this so it feels supportive for you. Now, when you turn to your left, remember the last shape we did was a side. We don't have to remember that, but when you turn to the left, you're going to reach your left hand back to the blanket. Make sure there's enough stack of that so you have some adequate height. And then hook the right elbow. The word hook is probably a good one for this. So when you explore the rotation, this side that you were lengthening moments ago, feels like it's served in a very site-specific locale, the thoracic chamber. It's more of that mid-vertebral column space. So if my hand feels like it's too high up on the blanket. So I want to feel like my bones in the arm are supported, but they're kind of more of a floaty bone structure in the hand. I'm not trying to push my palm down. So I like the spider, the hands movement where you just let your finger pads touch, open out the fingers. Okay. Now hold on to that left knee with the right hand, and then feel when you turn your heart back to the front. Hand is holding the left knee. Breathe in. Exhale, twist. And let's let these be just kind of gentle rotations. So do several of them. Noticing that when we were on our back, knee to chest was a little different movement in the spine. So we're kind of trying to rinse out, right? We're usually doing a lot of cleaning work inside with the class, but trying to really wriggle through the core. Okay, now as you come back to the front, pretty good. Now as you unwind to that left arm, bring the left foot on the inside of that right leg, and then the sand goes up to the left leg, the right foot steps out, you're still sitting, so stepping out may seem a little strange to say, but reach the right leg out, put a ball under the left knee, and then block is great to have under your right hand over besides the leg on the outside of the leg. And you're going to use that hand on the block, whether it's flat or medium height, depends on how long your arm is, isn't it? You're going to push out with that block so it's really besides the leg, and you're going to lean down and let the left arm relax behind your back. Right, so that rotation now is balanced in the belly, in the ribs. It's almost like this is meant to be a little calming for the wringing out. So it's considered a side stretch, right? Head towards knee. You might not touch your knee with your head. So let's get a feel of your head turning your front of your face towards your right leg, just turning it. Still that left side has a little stretch. Feel the hand pushing the block towards the foot. Okay, now as you come up, you don't have to slide your block in right now, but you might bring your right hand to the leg and then come up and then help that leg cross into a cross-legged in front of the left leg, and then get a block and put the sand on the right side, and then take your block kind of positioning on the towards the left side. So it's, for me, it's between my knee and my foot, but for some of us, it might be a little different, meaning it might be, you might be spanning it quite far out to the left, but lean a little bit, but try to have the knees so they're fairly open. It's more, a little bit wide of a position with the knees. I don't want you to close it and try to make a box shape, which is sort of a habit like well, it's not, it's just a tradition in yoga, like we're trying to make a box. And it might be a little tense. So I want you to get a feel of the hands so they're reaching to the top left corner. So get a feeling of that length through the waist. Maybe it's a minor length through the waist. Oh, my cat is stuck in the room. She's gonna have to get let out. Hi, Sage. Oh. You feel like you're gonna have to scratch out of the room. I'll let you out in a minute. Okay, so feel when you lean to the left. There's this cat shape in the back. You think this is a cat pose? So when you feel that round, I want you to bring your hands actually up and around to the knees, so you're centering through. And then you're going to round your back like cat and lift up through the arch of the spine. Inhale and exhale, round the back to cat, and inhale, lift up, arch through the spine. Okay, so when you come down, hopefully you're not going to sit on a cat in front of you, your feet, but you're going to slide out. So you're going to come down to the side stage on the right hip. So lean down to the right and then lengthen that left leg back and reach so that your thigh band on the inside has a ball, And then this time, maybe you'll get the sand on before you lie down, or you didn't have that issue. But reach with that support of the sand, and then extend through that left arm so it extends and reaches through. Maybe you get that block overhead. Okay. Oh, yeah. You'll jump up on the screen probably. There we go. She was snuck in here. I didn't know she was in here. All of a sudden I saw a cat. Am I seeing things? I think I have that cat. That's one of my cats. Okay. So with this reach of the ribs, I'll go without my sand just to give some particulars. You've got the length. And, you know, when you're in the side lane of your body, of your breathing experience, you have pressure on one lung and you have an openness on the other, right? At least a little bit. Maybe it's not like you're not squishing and mushing entirely one, but it is happening. There is a visceral response in your tissues. So, you know, feel when you move into this, you know, you're moving down towards the ascending colon, right? That's the pressure. And also that right side band. So I would let the legs really be wherever it's comfortable for your knee bending. And some days this right leg is not going to be so hinged up and tension bending, right, when you're trying to get the most crease. Feel if you have a little less, and it's just kind of fluid. Such a good time to be finding ways to inhabit inner fluidity and responsiveness in your breathing and your organs, and just to create a comfortable inner environment. That's kind of all you might be able to create in some days more than others, but feel if you can control that environment. So with the in-breath, filter the air through the nose and out through the mouth. So this is a lengthening position, and when we come up to take the twist, you'll notice that this left side piece now kind of connects to the lower piece a little bit, but it's definitely the middle that you're working with. So it's nice to have a solid base and feel grounded, but it's wonderful to feel a good middle, like the middle, kind of the middle path, right? The mid body it's important to find some harmony in that space with just the things in the mid body, the organs, digestive tract, lower back, you know, those layers of connection into the pelvic floor. Okay, so some of you might feel like you want to stay with this shape for a little longer. So you might even roll on the back of your head, open out the left arm, feel comfort with movement, tracking. And then when we roll a little towards the right side, towards the right rib cage, I like it to have a little bit of this twist here, you know, even if I'm not standing up for it. I like to have this rotation. So my head is down, turning to the left, and just feel my back supported. This feels good, even if it's 30 seconds before I come up to do this. Now hands push, and as you start to lift yourself up to sitting on the bolster, you'll have an opportunity to feel where the weight production is in your seat, and then how you transfer the right leg crossing up over the left. Again, you could add that sand under the left leg. It's fun to do different sequences, so this is a little different pattern that we're doing. So when that left leg is forward, can you find kind of the basic nature of the leg versus forcing into it? And the nature of the right knee, trying to point up. I don't want to force the knee up again because it's the same as the foot. I don't want to let this hip flexor get kind of feisty. That's not what we like, is feisty flexors. And then when you're turning to the right, you're going to feel your rib body kind of pushed in, puckered in, and then you're going to turn and flow. Right hand back, left arm. Maybe you hook the arm, but see how sometimes I will, or maybe anyone will, anybody that's trying to coordinate is likely going to compensate. So even though I can put my arm across the right leg, it's a different flexibility than the first side. It is certainly measurably different. So I try to compensate by bending and then trying to kind of hook my elbow and then getting back up. But there was a piece there that I was efforting to get that, like the other side. So what you might offer is to move your right foot a little higher up outside the left leg, even if the foot's not perfectly parallel, and then move your arm to the leg and rotate and kind of play with it. Not to say there's any rules and you have failed if you have rounded your back and trying to pull yourself up, but feel the mid body do some of that work. Feel the breath body helping you twist. So you have a little rotation on your exhalation. So that right hand can reach a little bit back, the rotation through the rib cage. Breathe. It only helps. And this is a perfect pose to notice that it takes attention to get somewhere. And it's not like this is a relaxing shape. Takes a little bit of going through the motions to get to where we're aiming for releasing. So we're lining things up. Now, when you come back to the front, we're going to take that sand, if you have it, away. This kind of perfect placement. Then I bring the left leg open, the sand on the top of the right thigh. I like a ball under my right knee. You could use a block as well. And then when you reach to that left outer leg, get a feel of kind of the webbing of your foot, because it's like it is a webbing. Even if you look at the skin tone on the foot, it's like this web around the skin and the main layer. And then the reach down through that block on the left side of the leg. I turn, I let my arm go behind my back, but it doesn't have to be there. You can be open. You can move your arm and flow it, or keep it simply just here, leaning down a little bit. Yeah, and pulse that in and out breath. Yeah, and I think sometimes you can be a little bit fearful of dropping the head down to the left, and you're sort of trying to stay as safe as you can in this waistband in the low back. So you might let the hand slide, and then you might pull the block back in and then slide it back out. Depends on your floor, isn't it? If it's a carpet, it might not be quite as easy to push, but get a feel with that turn of the ribs. That's what I want you to emphasize, is that turn of the ribs. Okay, now they're already turned, so you're going to slide, or you don't have to slide your block, but come up. Cross the left leg in front, take the sand to the left leg, and then get the block or the other block, whatever block you've got around, to the right side. And then that rib cage that you just turned is kind of ready to go to this right reach to the top right corner. It's about 1 or 2 o'clock to the right side. And you're leaning and feeling through that left hip. Breathe. You don't have to do cat-cow, but you might sense some of the circulation. We are going to go into that proper cat-cow, hands, knees in a moment. So kind of feel where the waist roams here, roaming ribs, rib roam. Okay, now with that movement of the arms, let's use them. So let's bring the hands up to the leg, middle, and then take your sand away, okay? And then when we come back, I want you to slide your blankets. If you have two of them behind you, you might use it as a, pull them in and get rid of one. That usually is an easy selection process. But when you take your left leg back, oops, get some blocks out of your way. You want to find that you have enough room. For me, I just have to stay and screen, but for you, that you have enough room on your mat for your foot behind you, your 2 feet. So now you've got two. And when you are leveled out here with your bolster, turn it forward. So you have that bolster spine-wise. Have your blanket, just under the knees is fine. Doesn't have to be perfectly with a bolster, but take the legs to the knees close together and lift up the right leg behind. And as it lifts up, you want to get a feel of that heel reaching and pressing. And it's not standing, you're not standing on the heel, but feel the energetics of that push through the right leg behind you. Okay. And then bring the knee back to the left knee, right? You're getting them close and then switching the side, right? Right knee is down now, left leg is back. So I want you to alternate this a few times. We won't stay with it that long behind you, but just alternate the reach of the leg. Okay, feel this for maybe 2 more times each side. Feel what muscles you engage, whether you create pressure in your buttock to lift up the leg, or if it's the reach of the waist. So what I'm trying to get at is that you're creating this arch. So you're arching the spine, moving your chest a little forward, the leg goes back, and the knee touches in, and then you're arching. Okay, and this will come together now when we lift up the knees, back, lifting, heels towards the floor, downward dog. And then bring your feet together and lift up the right leg. And then it's a natural swoop right through the body. It's naturally going to be very curved. And then lower the right leg. Even if you're not sensing when you lift now your left leg that you're making lots of curve, it is causing that position in the bones and weight bearing into the leg and the hip. Lower down. And then take a position where your feet are in a wider stance, about hips distance or a tiny bit open. And then let your head lower. If you might get close to the bolster, that's fine, but work on pushing the floor away with both sets of extremities. And then feel when your knees bend, you're going to walk your hands back towards your blanket first. And then once you get your hands maybe on top of that blanket, line up the spine out of the back of the mid pelvis, and then let your head relax down entirely. So maybe nod your head on the top of the spine and feel if you can turn your head. I know your head is not like a mop head, but you want to get a feel of that. What would that be like to let my head pivot? And then feel if the weight of your brain, right, can stretch out through the spine, connecting to the brain stem, and then let your weight of your brain let go. Okay, I know it makes you feel sometimes the sinuses change, the circulation. It's a great dynamic for your circulatory system, right, for your respiratory system. So it will feel a little bit off for a moment, but you won't forever have that sensation in the nose and the nasal cavity. But it's a good one to hold the elbows, to swallow, clear the throat. And then taking the breath that fills up your body and empty the lungs. Head heavy. Be sure you can let the weight of your head go. Great. Good. Nice work. Change the crossing of the arms if you're holding your elbows. Releasing that hold. Hands are going to center to the ground. So where do you find that center of gravity? You're going to reach the hands forward, walk on forward to the knees down, and then gradually lengthen your upper body down the bolster. And then we're going to put our elbows down so we're in that Sphinx pose. And I want you to get a feeling of the position of the elbows down. So you create some tone in your shoulders. So be kind of concentrated on this tone from the back of the arm, the tricep down to the elbow. And that is a direction you usually feel when you put your hand on your back with your elbow pulling forward. But I want you to feel that you're kind of standing on the tricep, where your elbow is down and that's your tricep stands on top of it. That sounds kind of funny, standing on your tricep. But we want to have the whole body stand on the tricep. So get a feel of the top of the feet resting, the nice gentle arch of the spine. Pretty simplified. Breathe so that the belly feels a little pressure into the bolster. And then you feel it relax. Now, as you let your feet widen out a little bit, just a little bit, the knees can still stay in their position, but slide the hands back where those elbows, pretty much, you can probably feel where the dent is on your mat a little bit, where your elbow was. So that's a good place for like the root of your index finger. And then lift, but try to do the lift from your awareness of reaching for. I mean, if you didn't have eyesight and you weren't striving with your eyes, you can still strive with the stretch, concentrate in the front of the body, not just the chest body or the heart, but even below. So that's awareness in the whole front laying. Okay, and then come back to table. Push the bolster forward, kind of away, and get a couple blocks under, well, just one under each hand. That would be easy. And then when you feel that position of moving back, I want you to shift a left knee into the center and step the right foot forward. Reach that arch of the chest forward again, okay, or the spine, I guess, the chest forward. Toes under left foot. Lifting through the position of your right foot, pushing down. So you kind of cantilever here. You're kind of pushing down through the right foot to lift up the hip. And then you're in a lunge. And the lunge might be kind of feeling a little bit in between a really good lunge and a reverse lunge. Okay. So now let's lower down the back heel. So you're going to turn the left foot so it's not parallel, even when the heel goes down. I want you to actually pivot the back foot, so it's a little bit of a rotation out. Take your block besides your right foot all the way up, right besides the foot, and then you're going to turn to your left, and then left hand on the hip. Yeah, there we are. So feel rotation through the waist, and maybe the left arm stays with the hand onto the hip. Maybe you stretch it over the left side of your face. And make these movements kind of casual, kind of easeful, just doing our practice. Now feeling where the leg muscles are attending here, leg attendance. Yeah, we're taking leg attendance today. So as you lower the left hand down, you're going to move that block up too. So they're both up at the highest setting, regardless of how flexible or mobile or long you are. So when you get a feel of that right knee bending, I'll give this as an option. We'll have a half moon option. Okay, so maybe your bolster's in the way, but we'll see. And if you're not a half moon mooner, then you can go up to warrior one. Okay, so warrior one would be, I keep my foot this way and I lift up. Okay, hands together above. Okay, half moon is I would lift up my back heel, pivot to lift it up, and then shift my weight in the right foot, take the blocks forward. Maybe you're going to touch a spot that's near you in front, but maybe you'll miss it. And then pivot that left foot up in the air so you're turning through the hip. You can give it a try even with your hands continuously on the blocks. And if you want to try getting that left arm to lift up, give it a try and try to work the way so the inside of that right leg is active. It's got to be to hold you up. And you can always bring your hand back down to your block. If you give it a little try and it drops down, go with the moving down. But feel that left leg and that rotation and the weight bearing into the right leg. Great. Yeah, you just got to try it. You know, sometimes you try it, sometimes you back out. But now if the right foot is turning, the big toe side is starting to push in, and you're getting a little, sometimes flimsy on the foot, not that anyone is, but it can be challenging on the surface you're on sometimes. So now when you pivot the upper leg in the air so that toe set faces down, then you'll bend through the right knee and carefully move your blocks back and step the left foot back. Take forward fold left foot, steps forward to the right. So if you're in warrior one, you're going to join us with our feet a little bit closer and then hips together, our feet together, hips together. Hips are not together right now. Feet are close. And then see if you can let the arms reach open, bend through the knees, and then come up. Lift up your hands. You can't see mine, but your hands are coming to touch together. Inhale. And exhale, open the chest, fold back forward, change sides. So right foot back, take a moment here with that lunge. So I want you to lower the blocks down to at least that second setting, and then get a feel for the movement of that left knee just above the ankle, kind of that stride of movement. Yep, if your blanket's in the way, you might want to shift it so it's not going to cause a tripping hazard here. But feel that right foot now turn so the heel peels, well actually you're pushing the heel down and the foot presses to the floor. Usually your rear kind of pushes out on this pose a bit more than we would like. So what you want to do is get your block besides your left foot high up, and then you're like scooping the tail under to the right side, the tail goes, and then that right arm flows up or the hand stays on the hip, right? Honor where your energy is at right now. If you're tired and you need the hand on the hip, stay with the hip hand. Okay, or the arm goes over the side of the head. Okay, keep progressing. Lower that right hand down. Now this time we're going to play with the half moon this way. So you're going to slide your weight to that left foot. Lift up that back leg, take the block forward outside that left side track. So it's not on the same track of your left foot, it's out, right? It's not right in front of your foot. It's a little bit out to the little toe side and up. And then feel, and if this is a challenge, you've been a while since you've been half mooning, you might feel, oh, this leg is not budging, it's not straightening, but see if you can work from this right hip opening, pushing to the heel. Yep, you can have both hands on blocks. You just do not have to do it though. You don't have to be hands free right now. But get a feel of the push of the base leg. Play with that feeder into the hip joint. Okay, and then turn so that back leg pivots so the toes face down. I guess some of us were going to lift our arm up to the right, huh? So if you haven't tried that and you want to lift your arm up, you can go for it or come back down. And then as you step the right foot back, get a feel of that full reach through that right heel for a moment. We're not going to step forward this time, so I want you to keep the lunge back. And then lower the back knee down, finding some padding. And then we'll come back onto our knees, kneeling on the blanket, and then hands under the shoulders. Round your back to cat. And then come back to child's pose. So the knees might be wide. If this is a limiting pose for you with the knees, then you will need a blanket on top of your calves, maybe rolled up more than this one. And then as you wedge that blanket behind the knees, you can lower down and maybe put your hands in a stack under your forehead. Yeah, really let the back body lengthen here. If this is a tricky one for you with your knees, you can also, and this is still tricky with a blanket, you can have your hands a little wider forward and then work with that heart opener of the chest down and forehead down without creasing back all the way into your heels with your seat. That's okay. So you might be a little bit more of this upper child pose. But with a few moments, so when we are feeling that reach of the hips back, you know, it's kind of interesting in these shapes, this shape, it's such a wide back position for the back of the pelvis. And some pose sequences, it feels like it's wider than other sequencing. So right now for me, it feels like it's pretty warm in the back. My back is fairly warm, loosened up. And now when you come into the next shape of movements, we're going to track moving any leg will go forward, like a pigeon pose pattern. So slide a leg so you kind of hook the knee and then take a seat and get actually the ball would be good because we all have a ball. So let's use that. Okay, whoever's here is gonna get to use that. So we'll do it. Get a bolster in front of your legs. And when you lie back, you want to have the feet on top so you can massage into the glutes. You want to have a little lift of the leg so it drops the weight. So you have that transfer. And so I would get your blocks easily accessible to you and your ball and lie on it, right? You want to lift up your hips and get your ball under let's go right glute so we have a similar side, why not? So I've got my ball right behind, right under my right buttock, but it's kind of high on the buttock. It's the glute medius, but be sure that you really smash the ball. Just push into it. You might have to get it just right with your clothing. But when you get that ball positioned, it's likely going to kind of grip to you. And you're going to let the body use both movement, actually weight, and then movement. It's like massage, right? You use the weight of the piece of the body that's into the body's part it's massaging, and then movement has to happen to create that circulation transfer. So this is really nice to start to study a self-massage. The ball is a great tool because using your hand it just tightens other body parts up when you have to use yourself to do it more than a piece of equipment. So you can go slow or you can move up the speed a bit. But take a couple moments more on this right buttock. I'm just going side to side like I'm just drawing a bit of a scoop, kind of swinging the hip right to left, just a little bit of rocking motion through the hip. You might go a little towards the outer lateral side of the right hip because it feels like that's where you got your little tight spots. You're welcome to lift the leg on the bolster. The opposite leg where you're rolling can give you more body weight into the tissue that you're trying to clamor for releasing. And then change the ball into the other buttock and give us some time, right? You can always move your blankets. You have one blanket under your head or move it away. And I find that one side, I just naturally start to tilt to that lateral side because I know that's where it feels good. And one side's a little bit more frozen with that response. So learn about yourself a bit with what could be adaptive in your practice to help yourself. I know it gets to one point when you do poses that are kind of prescribed sequences, and then you start to figure out what could help you. So hopefully you get some ideas from these sessions, or it's nice to return to them too. So find that circulation. I know if the cat stayed in here, she would definitely be trying to find this ball and take it for herself. We'd have a game going on. All right, so when you get a feel of that pressure and you're rolling, or you're using just body weight and kind of sitting in it or sitting on it, what you're doing, lying on it. Okay, now when we move the ball away, actually just keep it at the sacrum. So move it a little bit into the center of the buttock space, right? The gluteal fold is a nice way to say that space. And then you kind of lay into the ball, but sacrum, so base and the spine. And then just let get a feel of this front of the core space. So it's like lower than belly button layer. Okay. And then that space should feel calm. It's not gripping. Now, when you push down into your bolster, I know the bolster might be under your feet, or might be a little forward. So this would be a good time to direct that alignment for the bolster. So when we push into our feet, the side muscles on the legs kind of clamor for equanimity, right? You want to find some equilibrium in your bones positioning. So find when you just start to push into your feet. If it's a little shaky, that's so good. So you want to push into your feet, lift up the hips, just enough that you can get the ball away from underneath there. And then lower the spine all the way until you feel like the upper bones of the pelvis, the back. And then reach for the bolster with your heels and pull it in so it's close to your rear. If it feels too close for comfort with your knee joint, then you might scoot it a tad forward when you get the lift. But now we're going to take the ball between the knees, and you'll take the lift with just casualness, not trying to push into the ball aggressively, but we'll lift the arms overhead and we'll lift up the hips. If it feels like your blanket's not good under your head, move it away so it's there for your arms. And then lower your arms when your spine travels down. Okay, so alternate. You're going to push into your feet, do a light scoop, so light that when you lift your hips and your arms go back, it's fairly mellow. And then as you lengthen down through the spine, lower the track of the back, gradually center. And I want you to work for the next few moments with this alternating drawbridge. But the place to work on feeling is that the back, not just the spine, is getting that movement traction, but that when you lower down to feeling everything on the ground in the back, that it's kind of this wider global feeling of releasing down. So, of course, this might be something you experience and maybe not so certain. But the arm position will change that globalness, right? If my arms are like narrow, it's not going to work, right? I need to have a little bend in the elbows so that opens up the back. They can only go out so far. It feels a little awkward if you try to poke them out. Okay, give it a few times. If you would like your blanket under your head again, just move it back. It's not required to move it out. It might be a little bit more circulation dynamic through the spine without the blanket. Okay, so be gradual when you lower down, slow. Okay, and now we'll take the knees in and move the ball, and we'll push the bolster with our foot over to the right side of your mat, outside the mat, besides it. And what I want you to do here is to place the ball between the knees and try that bridge pose one more time without the bolster on your feet. And then when you have that immediate time between the two, just see which do you prefer. I know that there's some that really like the floor better than the bolster, but I think it feels a little better on the feet and the legs, but the other one feels better in my spine. So I guess you can't have it all. But you can try two different poses. And then as you lower down, try to scoop the knees in. I know that's tricky to squeeze and bring the knees to your chest. Take the ball out and stretch the right leg straight down. Cross the left leg over to the bolster and try to get that leg so it's on the bolster. And mostly the foot, the inside layer of the lower bones in the knee. And if you get the ball to your sacrum and the sand on the outer leg, and then you feel like you can get your knee to touch down, sometimes it's getting the blanket under your head, you know, that all those different heights underneath you will amount to getting the leg on the bolster. Okay, so taking sand, outer left leg, see if that works enough to get on the bolster. If you find that you would prefer a blanket on top as well on the bolster, then add that. And open out through the left side of the waist to the turning ribs or the churning ribs. And eyes, well, actually, it's simply your head turns to the left. Going into the final spinal here. Especially if your legs feel a little bit tired from sequencing today, maybe center. And let it settle, especially through the side of the leg into the hip. Filter the air in and out. And what if that leg doesn't feel as much pull after a while? It starts to get into a kind of a simple trance of movement, and not necessarily is it over something you can overcome. Just feel when you can release. But these turns of the neck and the hip, I think, are important in this pose. The reclinal spinal, right? You've got the cervical gently rotated, and then you've got the leg rotated. So if you're just thinking mechanically, it's a good, you know, lubricating position, right, for things. Structural. Okay, now when we come out, if you have the ball, move that away. And then get a feel here for the connection of the knees to windshield wiper. So when I slide the right foot up a little bit, and then I take the feet apart and I windshield wiper the knees. Now the bolster might be kind of in your way. So if you are, you might just shift a little bit out so it's out of bounds here. Maybe it gets more inbounds if you try to move it around. So the arms are going to be hands on the ribs. This is important. So I have my hands where I consider my ribs if I point to them. So it's below the heart level, and it's where you feel the cage. And when the knees shift side to side, try to get them so they're not just kind of pointy, but there's some fluidity, like there's a little bit of movement, kind of roundness through the lower back into the buttocks, like you're kind of making circles. It can start to become like that, not just this side to side windshield wiper, but you're human, right? You're not a vehicle. So you want to feel some of that contour. And then as soon as the knees come back towards the midline, walk the feet up towards your seat, knees rest together, spine centered. Interlace your fingers, stretch the hands back overhead. Knees together, that's the big piece. Now, if the feet move out a little farther, it doesn't necessarily make it a better shape, but maybe more layered in the center of the back of the pelvis. Okay. Now switch the bolster to the other side. Take a moment where we get into these, even though these are kind of the final shape patterns today, you want to get a feel for that fluidity. So left leg down. And then as you cross over, do you have that left leg kind of as your rudder, it kind of lengthens through that backbone of the heel. And then you just let that go. You try to keep a friendliness into your crossing over. And then the ball and a sandbag, I think are really important here. Yeah, it feels like it becomes an operation and helpful loosening up of these tense fibers here. So getting that ball there at the sacrum, or maybe a little below. You know, it's funny, I was for a while had the ball lower, and now it feels better higher up at the sacrum. So go figure with those things. Go figure. Go figure. So my ribs are in this rotation already. I don't have to do much to push it. But when I bring the right arm open and turn my head to the right, and you can let the left hand be anywhere it's comfortable. And let the hip kind of dominate the focus. So the leg might pull up a little higher over on that left side. You might poke it so it lifts up and then centers on the bolster. Maybe you let it guide a little downwards. Breathe. Exhale completely. Now feeling any movement patterns in the chest, armpits. If that feels pretty loaded, then I would encourage your breathing to really sustain your focus, right? It feels like sometimes you get kind of sleepy in these poses and you lose the momentum of breathing and that lymphatic massage. So let yourself have this kind of mild attention that's important for the processing. And then when we begin that movement of coming out of this side, you'll probably find that you either decide ball goes first or sand. I mean, you can always try it the other way than we did last moment. See what that change does with your leg crossing. And then when we do come up for our final pose, I want you to feel that connection of the knees in towards the ribs, and then roll up and get some blocks under your bolster. The bolster's going to be in front of you though. So the blocks could be high and they could also be the mid height. I gave a high height trial yesterday and it didn't work again. So for me, I'm kind of stuck at this mid height, and that just works for my balance. Don't lose it, but you might find a longer leg will work better on the higher height anyhow. So we can have a couple blankets to get higher. That could work. So we get that inversion. A sandbag underneath your neck, right, is great. So when I lower down and I have that support, you don't have to have a sandbag either. Maybe you have a special pillow you use. Yeah, you kind of have to get it in the right packing front in your head. Okay, scoop it in there. Use your sandbag. Use it. Probably don't use it a lot during your days, but when practice you do, set aside for yoga. Okay, so I like this because when I turn my head, eventually it nestles into the right little cranial sac. It's kind of that way. It's a cranial sac, cranial sand. Okay, kind of holds it. It's kind of nice. So it feels almost like it's being held. And if I could get these handles just lightly lifted on something holding them, it would be a really nice cranial sacral kind of massage. I could figure that. So the legs set themselves supportive, your arms are down and your shoulders are resting. And that repeat of breathing resonates at the level of your belly, but it might also start to resonate at the level of the heart. So feeling that movement of the abdomen, the center of the heart, and breathing in slowly and breathing out smoothly. Gather your attention on the even rhythm of breath. Now, when you feel that lowering of the breath movement in a low belly, and if that is an impulse for you to try to push the belly and be as good of a breather as you think that would be, maybe go a little bit under that layer of pressure and just feel that you're creating that fluidity in the front of the body with the breath, but also the back of the body, that interconnected experience and integration. Circle the feet, see if you can stay integrated with the breath base. The feet turning both directions. Sounds of toes. Happy feet. And if the feet can find that continuous sense of float for the moment, noticing how the hardware of the feet feel. What part of the foot feels the best from this position? And use that part of the foot today to just sense, especially when you're without a shoe on, you can sense the foot. Now the feet come into maybe Cobbler's pose, right? Knees out, feet together. If that feels too pressurized in your legs, then you can bring your knees to your chest in the beginning now of this portion. But when you feel the light vulnerability in this shape with knees out, feet close, and then you feel that resonance of moving the knees now towards each other, it's just this nice harmonious movement patterns we can practice. You know, these are just basic movement plugs that we can have in our daily ritual of practice, even if it's not like you have like pose assignments. You have movement, opportunity. So rock a little side to side, whether you're holding the back of the legs, clutching, or just below the knees. Either is fine, whatever's natural for you. And of course, we come together at the end with a moment. Roll to your side and let your hands help bring you up to maybe sitting on something. You gotta add an extra pillow to your practice. Little cushions. Take a seat, lifting up, centering the spine, but also the opportunity for the shoulders to feel their branches down from the neck. And then feel when you roll them back, maybe you notice the pointed pattern of shoulders or the rounded contour of their movement. And guide a sense of your head tilting to one side, maybe a light tilt, and then to the other side. Feel if your face pushes forward or you tend to tilt your head a little back. And the next time you move your head center, bring the chin to point a little down. Bring your hands up together in front of the heart, where we center and surrender, dedicating our practice and uniting our focus to receive wellness for yourself and most importantly for others. Inhale. And with exhale, bowing to the space.